Now, there will be no rebellion on gay marriage when it returns to the Commons next week because, as we've been discussing, the government have promised a free vote on the issue. That doesn't mean that Conservative backbench dissent won't cause David Cameron trouble on a policy he's chosen to champion. And opposition will come from other quarters too when the gay marriage bill reaches the Lords. Here is the former Archbishop of Canterbury speaking in the Upper House last week.
Of particular concern to many is the bewilderment caused by a law concerning same-sex marriages which would change the face of society and family with no mandate or even a proper debate. Of particular concern at this point in the bill's passage is for the first time the way in which the proposals effectively institutionalise competing views of marriage in our society. Rather than promoting social cohesion, this will lead to greater social fragmentation. Far from ending the so-called battle over marriage, these proposals will formalise it and exacerbate it.
And the Conservative MP David Burrowes, he's the ministerial aide to the Environment Secretary Owen Paterson, is here now. Welcome to the programme. You are calling for a referendum on this issue. What's your justification for that?
It's because there's not a clear mandate for change. Ordinarily, it would come within a main party manifestos, and it wasn't in any of the main parties' manifestos. It's also the significance of the change. It isn't just simply a tidying up of marriage law, it's a significant social change that needs to be dealt with carefully, proper scrutiny, and also, if it needs to happen building a consensus. And the position of the Conservative Party, which is divided, is reflected in the country.
Right. I mean, referendums normally are reserved for major constitutional change, not social change. Do you accept that?
It is, but this has constitutional implications as well. There's issues of the church and state who've had a key interest in marriage for hundreds of years.
And Mr Burrowes says that he wants a consensus, but I don't think a consensus would be possible because I very much doubt whether anything would persuade you to be in favour of gay marriage. And I know that nothing would persuade me to be against gay marriage. And in the end, you have to have a vote. And I wouldn't fear a referendum because I have no doubt at all that gay marriage would pass a popular referendum. Absolutely no doubt at all. But I do wonder about this principle that you have a referendum when something wasn't in the manifesto. I mean, we're going to bring in charges for immigrants, health charges for immigrants until they start earning money. That wasn't in the referendum. Do you want a referendum on that?
No, but you have to accept that the issue of gay marriage has been particularly significant, not least in the party, but also in the nation. And it must actually.
It is, in the nation.
You must allow. Obviously, a referendum is not just about the vote; it's also about the national debate. It's good enough for states in the United States. It should be good enough for us.
We've had a huge national debate.
Well, we haven't,
yeah.
And we've had a debate in the media. But we haven't had a debate that it allows considered discussion of what has been a vital foundational institution for this country that reflects both concerns of church, but state and all individuals of all faiths and none. Surely we should allow time to have that debate and then to be put it to a public vote.
You don't want a debate, you just want to defeat the measure, don't you?
Well, I want both.
Yeah, yes.
Right, so it is a vehicle, you want to use it as a vehicle to defeat a measure you don't like?
Well, it would be a referendum, it would affect the commencement of this bill, but I'm concerned about that as well as trying to ensure that we have freedom of speech properly protected in the bill, and surely the government should be able to accept that when we come to those amendments on Monday.
Well, it's been controversial, but what is your evidence for saying that it is so controversial in the nation that it deserves a referendum? It certainly is controversial for certain parts of the population, but I mean, MPs voted in favour by a huge majority, didn't they, of 225, and a December poll by ICM put public support at 62% compared to 31% against. So I suggest that Matthew is right. If you did have a referendum, it would merely pass the test.
Well, we'd have to have a proper debate, but it depends, as ever with opinion polls, they're divided. It depends what question you ask. If you say that civil partnerships give effective legal rights, effectively mirroring marriage, then do you want to support gay marriage? Then it gets up to 70% of people who are against.
No.
Well, it's the case. Look at Commerce polls, for example.
Just ask people, are you in favour of gay marriage or not? That's the question, and that's the one where you get a clear majority. It's a generational thing. You know, people over 50 or 60 tend to be against it. People under it tend to wonder what all the fuss is about.
Well, I mean, you say generation. I think it's easy to characterise the way I think. I'm under 50 myself. And
you are, and you look it.
But also the case is indeed we found in the bill, the scrutiny, the lack of the voice of the BME representation. It's been profound in the scrutiny. That's of concern that we're going to make this huge change without hearing properly from them as we didn't in our
From
committee.
whom? I didn't get
Yes,
that.
I didn't.
BME?
From BME. There's no BME representation
Who are BME?
that gave evidence from, for example, black majority churches, from Hindus, from Sikhs, from Muslims. We didn't hear any evidence from them in the public evidence sessions. And that's a real concern. They're profoundly concerned. It's not a generational issue. It crosses divides, ethnic divides in the other areas.
Black and Asian people have every right to express their opinion in many ways to do it, but I don't think that you stop a measure just because one section of the community is predominantly against
Absolutely
it.
not. But we also don't go ahead without properly considering with care communities' interests. And the words said by Lord Carey were ones that said that the scrutiny has been very quick. We've been pushed through a consultation. It moved the goalposts from trying to separate civil and religious marriage to these proposals now. And one has to accept it is a big change. And what I say, we should have a proper debate about that and then allow it to come to a public vote.
But the government isn't proposing that any church will be forced to conduct same-sex marriages. There'll be protections put in place. So is there any evidence that people's religious freedoms will be compromised?
I think we have to recognise the issue of marriage is not just about the marriage ceremony. We're not just talking about that here. The issue of marriage is how people express it, their views on it, how people have it as a basis as charities doing marriage preparation, hiring a hall from a local authority, teaching about it in schools, expressing their view as employees. And we've already found examples of people's freedom to be able to express that view circumvented. And I want to ensure that on the face of this bill, we have protection not just for the church ceremonies, but also for people's views.
Well,
out
I'm
there
all
in
in
the
favour of
workplace.
protection for church ceremonies, and the bill is going to give protection to church ceremonies. As for freedom to express opinions, in a sense that's a different issue, not part of this bill. But I don't think...
That's the point. It's not part of the bill, but it
I
should
don't
be.
think those people who are unhappy about gay marriage have been in any sense gagged during this debate. We seem to have heard endlessly from you all.
But the hostility, the threats, and you'll know yourself in different contexts, this just generates
Hostility towards you?
death
Or?
threats and the rest of it. And even for myself proposing that we should have amendments enshrining freedom of speech, has the hostility on social media and the rest of it to myself, even suggesting that we should allow protection for people to express the traditional view of marriage. Now, it's okay for me to take that. I've got broad shoulders.
Yes, you should have broad
exactly.
shoulders.
But-
You're a member of
but
Parliament,
exactly.
and members of Parliament
Get
who
that
have
sort of-
spoken out in
But
favour of
Frederick
gay
Smith-
marriage have had to put up with a
But
lot of
Frederick Smith, the
hostility
housing
too.
manager,
People
said it
feel
was-
strongly
said
about
it was an
these
equality
things.
step too far. He then got demoted from his job and he had to rely on the Equality Act. We're just saying allow people like that the extra protection, that they won't be demoted, they won't be discriminated against for having a traditional view of marriage.
How much dissent do you think there will be when this comes back to the Commons?
Well, there'll be, I would say, at least the same dissent in a majority of the Conservative Party who are against. There'll be additionally people who abstained or who indeed were in favour, who want to see additional protections that go beyond what happens in the church premises to issues of freedom of speech. People want to see extra assurances. The government, through all the 13 sittings of the bill that I sat on, didn't make any amendments in that regard. They spoke warmly and positively, but nothing on the face of the bill.
There is one question, again, about UKIP and its influence in the last set of elections, the local elections, and also that many grassroots Tories have expressed concern about this. Is that something that perhaps the leadership should be listening to more keenly?
Well, it could listen, but in the end it has to reject their views. Good old UKIP. You know, they're in favour of a room where people can smoke in pubs. But they're not in favour of a room where people could have a gay marriage, for instance. Their belief in individual liberty is extremely selective. This bill will pass the Commons easily. It will pass the Lords easily. It will pass into law easily. And in 5 or 10 years' time, you'll actually feel a little bit rueful that you got yourself on the wrong side of a social change.
Well, I think I'm on the right side of the argument in favour of marriage. And
But do you think it will pass easily? In the end, in a few years' time, you may still remember it, but do you think generally in society it will be regarded in the same way as civil partnerships, just something that happens?
And the shame is that we have properly come to recognise and respect civil partnerships, and we'll look back and
Did you vote for civil partnerships?
We'll look at. I wasn't in Parliament at the time.
Would you have voted for civil
I will do.
You would have done.
I would have done. The position is that we'll be looking back on seeing how has this strengthened marriage in our society. Shouldn't we be spending more time supporting relationships?
Well, I'm in favour of
supporting
marriage too,
parenting?
and I'm so
Spending
in
all this
favour of it
time
that I want to broaden
getting so distracted on an issue that wasn't in any manifesto. Surely there's a lot more we should be concentrating on, which is in our Queen's speech, rather than getting
certainly is.
distracted on this area.
Well,
certainly
something
is.
that perhaps wasn't in the Queen's speech, but I'm going to ask you anyway, since it seems to be distracting, is on Europe. What's your reaction to David Cameron's proposal for this draft bill?
It's excellent news. It does make it crystal clear where the Prime Minister is coming from in ensuring that we are going to have a referendum, and our party is committed to it. I think the question
Did you not
now
believe it before?
is raised. I believed it, but it's ensured for the public out there to know that we mean what we say.
And how will you vote on the amendment to the Queen's speech?
I'll be supporting the amendment.
You'll be supporting the amendment. Thank you very much.